Welcome. My name is Licia and I'm a career strategist. And you are at the Career Revolution series. What is the Career Revolution? Well, the Career Revolution is the thing that happens inside of you to revolutionize your career. And today is a strategy session on how to get unstuck. As part of my process, I offer a 25-minute complimentary career strategy session to find out more about my work and learn more about you. In that, I ask those who book a slot to give me one word to describe their career. Stuck comes up a lot. Stagnant, stalled, impactless, meaningless, floundering, lost, flawed, scattered, hot mess, shambolic, to name but a few. So today is a 30-minute career revolution strategy session to help you get unstuck in your career. I hope you've got some pen and paper ready, and I'd love for you to let me know if you're watching this live or on replay. Share in the comments. Before we begin though, I'd like to pause and just acknowledge those of you who are watching us, who are joining us, those of you who are watching, and where the feeling of stuck really applies to you in your career. Now, I see you. I know how frustrating and debilitating this can be, because that was me once. When your work stops working for you, the frustration and the friction can feel suffocating. I also know that you're not meant to be stuck in your career forever. This crisis is only temporary. You're meant to thrive in your career. And I believe that we can all find career success and satisfaction on our own terms. I completely believe that when we face our biggest challenges, we're able to make the greatest leaps and advancements. So if you're here today because you are stuck in your career, I see you, I was you, I understand you. It's not going to be like this forever. And being in this stuck place might just be the friction that you need to leap into the greatness of your career. So I really just want to say that I honor and respect where you are, stuck in your career. I'm here to help. And for the next couple of minutes or the next half hour, I'm excited to share some strategies to help unstuck you. Some quick housekeeping. Just to let you know, the Career Revolution series is a weekly series. It alternates between inspiring interviews with people who've done unusual and unconventional things to find their calling and revolutionize their career, and strategy sessions, which is what today is. Some of you might have seen last week I interviewed the amazing Zimkita Mabindla, the Queen of Sabbaticals. And in that, we spoke a lot about how she was stuck in her career and the action that she took. So today's strategy session is prompted from so much of the information and questions that you shared with me, that really just bringing through what Zimkita shared as inspiration to help you integrate it into practice, something tangible. So that's what the Career Revolution series is. Please go ahead and follow my company page, Licia Career Strategist Co. You'll see the link in the comments. That's where you'll find all the information about the upcoming interviews and strategy sessions. And it's also where my team and I can stay close to you so that we can share additional value and also support you. I'm setting the intention for today's strategy session that you will be empowered with some action steps. You'll be equipped with strategy in order for you to be able to expand your belief of what's possible in your career. Before we get in, I'd just like to welcome some of the people that are catching us live. Welcome Basil, welcome to Jesse, and welcome to Onele. I also acknowledge that if you don't want to show yourself in the comments, that's absolutely fine. Please DM me and let me know what your feedback was to the session. So let's get started. Step one in getting unstuck in your career is to identify the source of stuckness. In other words, what was it that happened in your career to create the stuck feeling? Where is the stuckness coming from? Remember, clarity breeds mastery. And before you move into what next, let's take some time to analyze what is it that's created the stuckness. So your energy is completely, fully aligned and positively charged when you live authentically. When you're stuck in your career, you're out of alignment energetically, and you're out of integrity with your purpose. And that stuck feeling can create a sense of being clouded where you end up focusing on all the things that are going wrong, and it's very hard for you to see the things that are going right. So step one in terms of identifying the stuckness is what happened. I'd like to prompt you to consider it from a time frame perspective. This way, it takes the emotion out of it. Was this a gradual stuckness? Was it sudden? Or did you actually walk into a stuck mess from the get-go? So in other words, if it was gradual, can you measure from when to when? Look at what changed. When did this gradual stuckness start to happen? And analyze it through the lens of, was it people, process, or the place? People being the environment, the people that you work with, your team, people that you report to, above peer and below peer. Process being the type of work that you do. How do you actually work? What is it that you actually do? Place being the organization, the industry, the actual physical environment around you. So you're measuring the time frame in terms of it was gradual under the lens of those three things. Was it a gradual shift in the culture and the people? Was it a gradual change in the process and the way you work? Or was it a gradual change in the place in terms of the industry and the environment? First thing, time frame, was it gradual? Second, was it sudden? What was the specific event? If it was a sudden thing that created this stuck thing, try and unpack that. What was the sudden event, and did it come from people, process, or place? Third, did you walk into an existing stuck hot mess? And if that's the case, why did you not walk straight back out again? Seriously, if you have moved into a role, a brand new role, and it's nothing that you expected, and from the get-go, you acknowledge and recognize that you are going to be stuck, walk straight out again. So let me give you an example of this. I worked with a client, a sales director. He loved his work, but new regulations came into his niched industry, which changed everything. So instead of focusing on growth and strategy and innovation, he and his team from the sales side suddenly became bound by red tape and regulation. He described it as being surrounded by an electric fence. Whenever they didn't follow this ominous red tape and regulation that was imposed upon his industry, it was as if they would be this sudden, this shock. So he identified with me that it was a sudden stuckness as a result of the shift in place, the industry. The industry suddenly had to impart this huge regulation, and then it affected his process. So that was the clarity that he needed. So the next step in stage one of identifying what happened, time frame, the second thing is you want to look at what can be done. Can you do anything to change this stuckness, irrespective of whether it's sudden or gradual? If you walked into the stuck mess, I'm saying right here, right now, you need to walk straight out of that stuck mess. So what can be done? Can you do anything to change it? This is a simple yes, no answer. Write down yes, no. Question 2, have you alerted the people that can? So the people above you, the powers that be, can they do anything? Have you told them about the stuckness? Yes, no. Third, can they do anything to change it? Answer yes, no. So you then run through quick fire questions. You've identified the time frame. You then look at 3 questions. What can be done? Can you do anything to change it? Have you alerted the people who can? Can they do anything to change it? Now, 3 questions. If you've given me a majority no for all of those, then we need to have a serious conversation. No, I'm not being flippant. What I mean is you're able to see through the metric of these questions, yes, no answer, where the biggest issue is. So, for example, using my client, the sales director, industry had changed because of this regulation. He immediately flagged it with his superiors and said that this would hamper his team and it would totally affect their sales targets because they would be spending more time in red tape administration than actually solutionizing and growing their sales market. His people, whom he flagged it to, could do something about it, but initially they said, well, we appreciate this, but without this regulation, if we don't tick the boxes of the regulation, we wouldn't be able to operate in all the different multiple territories. They would lose their license. So at first, for him to have flagged it, it was acknowledgement. Let's move on. His sudden clarity of this is what's created the stuckness. It was an immediate event, sudden thing, and that affected the process and his desire and that affected the process, that coupled with his desire and willingness to try and make it work, he was able to move forward. So in other words, what I'm saying is what gets measured improves. Let me go further into the example. He flagged this with the people, the powers that be within his organization. They could change things. At first, they didn't think so. They heard him. They explained that it would be a case of losing their license if they didn't work with the regulation. But his desire to really want to move within this, loosen this stuckness, meant that he pushed forward with his organization, and they were able to create a regulatory role who sat within the sales team, wasn't a salesperson, but was a highly detailed contracts person who just sat there to run through the regulation and essentially disarmed the electric fence that was surrounding his sales force. So do you see how the power of analyzing the stuckness is so important? Sometimes, and I acknowledge that, when things aren't working, we're really quick to want to change and move. But the data that you can get, the information that you can have access to that can serve you and your future career in terms of understanding why you're stuck in your career, how did it come about? Have you done everything to alert, to change, and to ask for the stuckness to be removed? So empowering. That type of information is exactly what you need to be able to know whether you need to leave or whether you can stay. And I'm going to go on with the example of my sales director client because it's relevant for point or step 2 in the process. So if step 1 of getting unstuck in your career is to identify the source of stuckness, step 2 is to measure your desire or willingness to want to work with that stuck. So the example that I'm sharing with you is that my sales director enjoyed the people, he enjoyed the work. Suddenly the environment shifted industry-wise, which affected his process. He raised it to the right people. They at first said, we can't do anything about it, but then he continued to push with them for them to be able to see what could change. So we identified with him that he had a very strong desire to want to fix this. The reality was that in conversation with me, because this was his industry that he knew so well, should he leave, he would have to change industries completely. So it wasn't about just changing up the role or the company. It was about changing up the industry, and he was invested in the industry. He liked it. It was good for him. So step 2, measure the desire that you have and willingness to loosen the stuck. So in other words, being stuck could potentially be that you're in a holding pattern for something bigger that could come later on, or is being stuck completely damaging for you. It's one or the other. Don't wait and expect something to change. You're already going to move through step 1, which is identifying the source of stuckness from a time frame perspective and through the metrics of people, place, or process. Step 2 is you're going to measure your desire to want to work with that stuck. In other words, is this stuck a holding pattern for something better that will come within this organization, or is it impossible for me to be able to work with this and it's damaging for me and you need to move on? The measurement of that really has to come from yourself. Only the heat of your desire can actually answer that. So here's my definition of desire. Well, it's the Oxford English Dictionary definition of desire, but my conversion of that within a career sense is this. So desire is the definition of desire is a strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. So then your desire to loosen the stuck is the metric for you to know how much you want to work within the stuck. I'll say that again. Your desire to loosen the stuck is the very metric you need to know how much you want to work within the stuck. And I just want to take a little segue from here for the moment. I am all about we deserve to have our best careers. We deserve to live our best life within our professional work, and we can define success and satisfaction on our own terms. But things shift and things change now more than ever in this pandemic world. And sometimes moving just because there's a stuck might not be the best for you long term. So that's where it comes back to, is the stuck a holding pattern that you just need to work through in order for something bigger and better to come on the other side within the same role and organization? Or is it completely damaging and you have to leave? Only the measurement of your desire to actually work with that stuck can give you that feedback. So it's about examining what's right with your position despite being stuck, rather than focusing on everything that's wrong. And that's why I like step 2, which takes you into measuring how willing are you to try and fix or change that. Think about anything in life. Think about relationships. Think about spaces that we live in. Think about environments that we find ourselves in where problems arise. Do we fix it? Do we leave? Do we walk away? You know, the thing that pulls us towards it or repels us from it is the thing inside of us, and that's your desire. A strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing for something to happen. So let me go back to my sales director to be able to give you some more clarity around this. So my sales director loved his team. He loved his work. He really enjoyed the industry, and he didn't want to have to leave the industry completely. He identified that the stuckness came from a sudden event that was affecting the way that he worked. He flagged it with the people that he could change it. At first, they said, no, we can't change it. But when he continued to push through that with them and show them how detrimental it would be long-term, they were able to create a role within the sales team that disarmed the electric fence around him. He might well have left. He might well have said, this isn't great and I'm going to leave. I'm so grateful that he reached out to me. He booked a career strategy spark session with me, which really was focusing on what the problem is and looking at ways to unpack it. And in this, I took him through this process, and we were able to analyze his desire and willingness to stay was stronger than his desire to leave. So the detail of how I did that is I took him through a 3-step strategy to measure his desire. I don't have time to go into that right now, but I'll share with you, we covered his mental desire. How did he respond to the stuckness intellectually? We covered his emotional desire. What were his heart signs? How was he feeling about the role? And we discovered his physical desire. In other words, how is his body responding to this from a stress health issue perspective? And as a result of isolating those various elements, we were able to give he was able to get clarity around the metric of stay and figure it out. You see, when you measure the heat of your desire to work with this stuck thing, 3 very positive things happen. Firstly, the process of going through that measurement and thinking about it from a different perspective keeps you grounded, and it creates a sense of control within you. So rather than feeling like you're surrounded by an electric fence and nothing you can do, you start to go through the process and assume a sense of control. That control then propels you into action. This action is what will help maintain your energy and your focus on a solution. You see, when you're stuck and you're focusing on all the things that can go wrong, it's hard in that stress mentality to be able to look at solutions. But when you start going through a process which gives you a sense of control, which propels you into action, that action then by default helps you focus on what are the solutions. And that focus comes from a positive place of being aligned with your energy and putting you back in alignment with your purpose. So it kind of circles you back to your alignment. It works. So in the example of the sales director, let me explain how that worked. He knew he wanted to stay. I took him through the 3-step strategy to measure his desire. It meant that he wanted to stay to work with the stuck. He took action. He was able, through that action and assuming a sense of control, sell a solution to the company. This is not possible. We cannot continue to work this way. What else can we do? In that solutionizing mode, they were able to suggest the opportunity of the individual to be focused on contracts within his team, and that fixed the stuckness for him, bringing him back into alignment with his purpose, which was growth mindset, solution-orientated, and helping move the business forward from a sales perspective. So sometimes when you're in it, it's suffocating, as I said. But if you're able to apply a systematic process, if you're able to assume the control that process allows you, and then move through things, it gives yourself a pause, a breather, to focus on the solutions rather than potentially focusing on all the things that could go wrong. So, step 1, identify the source of stuckness. Step 2, measure your desire to want to work with the stuck. Step 3 then is take action. So as a result of identifying the source of the stuckness and measuring your desire, you will know, do I stay or do I go? This is the take action step. Taking action is about implementing the clarity of knowing what you're moving away from and what you want to move towards. My example of the sales director, he didn't want to move away from everything that he had invested in this organization, but he was good and solid, stuck to the point that he reached out to me and said, I'm so stuck, I need some help. So the 2 action strategies for you to use in the instance that you need to leave, I want to focus on that specifically, would be you need to develop an exit strategy. Your exit strategy is all about how will you leave? How will you give notice? When will you give notice? Who will replace you? What is the transitioning? Who will you stay in touch with in the organization? What will you miss from the organization? What information do you need? Where's your budget? How can you plan and manage to leave? Can you leave without finding another role, or do you need to find another role? So your exit strategy is a multiple fleshed out game plan that you need to be able to draft and plan and work with. Second strategy you need, or action step strategy you need, is a search strategy. How will you find your next role? What connections do you have that are going to support you in finding your next role? What is your visibility like? What do you need to do now while you remain in the role to build the network to transition to another role? Your search strategy, like your exit strategy, is a very detailed plan of all of the elements that you need to acknowledge, be aware of, and put in place. If you remain in the role until you find a new one, working with an electric fence around you isn't such a bad thing. I mean, it's debilitating, it's suffocating, but if that's what you have to do, I just want to run through 4 very important points to support you. So you've planned out your exit strategy, you've planned out your search strategy, but you still have to stay in this stuck role until the search strategy kicks in and then the exit strategy kicks in. So here are 4 things that you must please do. The first is define a deadline for your search strategy. When is it that you would like to leave by? If you don't have that clarity, how can you expect it to happen? Yes, I know that you might all say to me, but Licia, those events are outside of our control. Is there a role? Can I apply? How long does it take to recruit? And I just think that there's power in you saying that by such and such a date, I would like to be able to have made a move. So define a deadline for your search strategy. Please invest in self-care. Self-care, which is the kind of deep support for your well-being. Working with an electric fence around you is not a great space to be in. As I said at the beginning, I was stuck in my career and it can be suffocating. But if you're working on an exit strategy and a search strategy, then you know that those things, it's temporary, it is going to change, but investing in self-care is so important. Lean in to what works for you at work. So number 3 is lean into the things that work for you. Try to focus on the positive rather than focusing on the negative. And number 4 is maximize absolutely everything that you can in this organization while you can. So these are 4 survival tips, for want of a better word, to equip you should you need to remain within the stuck role while you're building your plan and action step to move out of the stuck role. Define a deadline for your search strategy, invest in deep self-care to keep you supported, lean into what works for you in the company, and maximize everything that you can within the organization while you can before you leave. Taking action in this step 3 is also about casting a big vision for yourself. I would be completely remiss if I talked you through action steps, but didn't leave an overarching strategy. So step 3 of taking action is implementing your clarity, exit and search strategy, and then casting a vision for yourself. And the way that you do that really is just through the prompt of this question: what would the greatest expression of yourself be in your career? What would the greatest expression of yourself be in your career? Every new stage of your career not only requires new thinking, but a new network. 2 types of people that you can work with: power partners. These are the people who amplify your vision of what the greatest expression of yourself in your career could be, and career collaborators. These are people who have got you to where you are now and who are going to continue to support your goals. So as we begin to wrap up, let me just go over to the questions and comments. Bronwyn, I wish I had your advice when I was going through my stuck. I left my position, but the situation has been a great learning for me. Well, then that's absolutely fantastic. Lesibana, thank you for a useful webinar. I'm so pleased. Thank you for joining us. And if there are any questions that you have live or replay, just shoot them into the comments. Our time is coming to an end. We're on 12:30, and it was just a 30-minute strategy session, but I'll certainly keep my eyes on the comments. And a wonderful thing is that this will live on my LinkedIn profile for some days to come, indefinitely, actually. So I'll be able to answer your questions as you send them through. And I also just want to say that if you're not comfortable posting questions openly in the comments, then I invite you to send me a DM. Please go ahead and follow my company page. This is where you will get all of the information about upcoming Career Revolution episodes, both inspiration series and strategy sessions. To end off, I just want to encourage you to trust the process. How to get unstuck in your career? 3-step process. You've done the work now. You've analyzed what's not working. You've identified what the time frame was. You've taken it through the lens of people, process, and place. And you've measured your desire to work with it or not. 3rd step, you're going to move into taking action. Trust the process, because that action will propel you forward. And remember, at the beginning I said, it's when we're in our stuckest places, when we face our biggest challenges, that we actually make the greatest and biggest leaps. You know, as Robin Sharma always says, in the beginning, it will be hard. In the middle, it will be messy. And in the end, it will be magnificent. So I wish you all a wonderful process of unstucking where you're at. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. I need to end off now, but I'm going to be catching you in the comments, and go ahead and follow the company page. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.